بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وخير المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى غالب كل غالب، مطلوب كل طالب، مولى في المشارق والمغارب، علي بن أبي طالب. الذي ضارب بسيفين مصلي إلى قبلتين أفضل من الثقلين، وعلى آل رسوله المختار الأبرار والأتحيار، سيما على الإمام المنتظر والحجة الثاني عشر. اللهم أجل لوليك الفرج. قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. Enlightening this gathering with one more salawat. In all of the all of the linguistic languages and literatures of this world, we find that writers and poets and those that delve in adabiyat and literature will convey certain simple messages, but by conveying these messages they will use certain faculties and certain factors and certain techniques and certain tools to make a very simple message and simple information seem interesting to read. For example, if you look at poets, whether they be in the English language, the Arabic language, Urdu language, Farsi language, these poets, these writers, these authors will convey very simple messages. However, they will use certain linguistical techniques such as figurative speech and various other tools that they have been trained to use, and they will use these to make this piece of writing, this piece of work attractive for us to read. For if there is a writer who writes very plainly without using these linguistical techniques, then he will not be a successful writer, because his writing will not be attractive to those that are reading it. And when you look at all of the literature of Urdu and Farsi and Arabic and the poetry of these languages, you'll find the language which is most depth in this area, which has the most different functions available, and it is so complicated, is of course the Arabic language. Because the Arabic language at one point was simple. It was spoken in certain area of the world. The language spread to different areas, but it was a simple language. And yes, they were known for poetry. They were known for their eloquence and fasaha and balagha, but the language wasn't too difficult. However, when we ask the question, why is it then today that this language of Arabic is the most complicated? There are individuals that spend 20 years of their lives memorizing books on Arabic grammar. In fact, there was one individual who mentioned Ayatollah Mudarris Afghani. Ayatollah Mudarris Afghani was one of the senior teachers in Qom. Ayatollah Mudarris Afghani was stated to have said that if all of the books of Nahu and Sarf. Nahu and Sarf, Arabic grammar. If all of the books of Nahu and Sarf in the whole wide world globally are thrown into the water, they are destroyed, then I, Mudarris Afghani, will be able to say each one word by word. I will be able to reiterate and repeat each of those books word by word from this memory of mine. There were people that memorized whole books in order to become mountains of knowledge in Arabic grammar. The question we ask, why is it that Arabic grammar is so complicated? The answer came because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran in Arabic. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this Quran in Arabic, the language completely changed. There were too many levels for this language for people to understand, which is why till today when you span the Quran and you look at the eloquence of the Quran and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use various different techniques to convey simple messages. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, will use majazat and kinayat and isti'arat and isharat. Now I know that means nothing to many of you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will convey very simple messages by the use of different figurative language techniques to convey a certain message. In this ayah of Surah Al-Ibrahim, Surah number 16, verse 24, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا كَلِمَةً طَيِّبَةً كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. And this is one of the most famous ayats of the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do you not see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a parable? He gives a mithal. He is presenting to us a simile, that the example of the pure speech is as if the pure tree. This pure tree has its roots firmly in the ground and its branches reach all over up to the heavens. Now people, when they read this, they ask two questions. Number one, what is this pure word? What are these pure words that the Quran talks about? And what is this pure tree? If you look within the books of tafsir, if you ask them of Mufassirin, they'll tell you that these pure words is dhikr of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Allahumma salli ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying dhikr of Ahlul Bayt, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, Aliyun Waliyullah. These are the pure words. These are like a pure tree. This tree which is rooted in the ground firmly. No one can move this tree. And the branches of this tree reach all the way up to the heavens. We understand that this tree is in actual fact Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using majaz, this metaphorical language in the Quran, to show us that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam are like this tree. For a tree, number one, will give its people fruit. Number two, a tree is the source of life. Why are we living? Because of the tree and what they do in the atmosphere. A tree will also be the source of shelter for many animals. A tree is a source of safety. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to tell us that, oh individuals, remember, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah. That the Ahlul Bayt are like this tree in the way that they give us life. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam give us blessings. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam give us this shelter. When we look at this simile that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses of the tree, there's a lot of depth that we can go in with regards to this. However, ijmalan, in a very brief way, we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam are like this tree. In the way that a tree will provide help and support and nutrition, Ahlul Bayt to provide nutrition to our soul. We also understand that this tree also refers to the family tree. The family tree of the Ahlul Bayt is mentioned in the Quran in this verse. That Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam are the pure tree, the pure family tree. And when we look at family trees, we understand that we have, for example, cousins and brothers and sons and daughters. And so tonight, when we look at the life of Sayyida Masuma salamullahi alayha, we start this discussion from this tree, that she is part and parcel of this pure tree, and she gives benefit in the way that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam have given benefit to us. However, there is a problem. For those of you that remember 18th of Ramadan in this very center, my first lecture in Masjid al-Hussein, I mentioned that two types of lectures are the most difficult to deliver. The first is that lecture for which there is very little material available. Because how do I choose? How do I get the material? How do I present it? The second type is that lecture for which there is too much material available, too much information about that person's life. How do I condense it? Which part of this material do I choose? 18th Ramadan was Amir al-Mu'mineen, and that was the second type, too much material. This lecture, however, unfortunately is the first type. That very little is found in the books about the life of Sayyida Masuma. However, tonight's discussion is historical. I was with you for 13 nights, and in fact, some people spoke to me on the Eid day that when will we see you again? I said maybe 1 year or 2 years. And alhamdulillah, so quickly I'm back. And in fact, I had other commitments, but I thought that maybe someone is doing extra dua for me to come so quickly. So I moved my commitments, and inshallah I'm with you tonight. If you listen properly, inshallah I'll be back. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When I was with you for 13 nights, very rarely did I speak about history, because I understand people often see that history is a boring subject. In actual fact, history is what Quranul Kareem uses itself to portray certain messages. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention, for example, Ad and Thamud, and Ras and Sabt, and this group of people and that group of people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention, for example, this Prophet Nabi Nuh, Nabi Yusuf. These are all pieces of history. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself also says, Siru fil ard fandhuru. Travel in the land. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again and again and again says, travel in the land. Fandhuru. Look, ponder upon the different historical civilizations that were there before you. So history in actual fact is part and parcel of Islamic sciences, and it is in fact a major part of the Quran. However, tonight, as the lecture has been titled, a socio-political analysis of her life. What this means is that we will conjoin these two, social and political factors, in order to understand the way in which her maqam and her status is great. And so if you follow with me, you'll understand that Sayyida Ma'suma's life and merits can be seen when we analyze the social political factors that were there during that time. As we understand, politics is often a very cliche topic, not really, it is a very controversial topic, because many times if I was to come and say tomorrow's lecture will be solely on politics, or if I was to say that Islam and politics are combined together, people may have objection. Because recently, not in fact recently, during the last 200, 300, 400 years, politics has a very negative connotation. In fact, there was a politician that said, politics is war without bloodshed, and war is politics with bloodshed. Politics in actual fact is this, it is like a battleground. And you see today that nearly every single person, there are istithna'at, there are exceptions. Nearly every single person in politics has a dark heart, except for the very small 5%. Majority of those involved in politics have a negative outlook on life. Majority of people in politics follow this Arabic line, ana wala ghayr, me and no one else. And so when people say that, look, our Imam alayhim as-salam were involved in politics, normally this has a negative connotation, that look, politics is a negative thing. But we understood when the Imam alayhim as-salam were involved in politics, they were only involved in politics for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single step they made in their political lives was not for themselves, was not for others, but was for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they tried as much as they could to stay away from politics, because the politicians were corrupt and rotten. And so many of the imams would send different, for example, delegates, that you, O individual, you are my companion, you have to be, for example, in the government, and you have to report back to me. However, sometimes it happened that the A'imma alayhim wassalam were thrown in the deep end of politics and were told, you have to play with the political game with us, if not we'll kill you. When we look at the life of Sayyida Masuma salamullahi alayha, we understand that she is born 173 AH during the beginning of the month of Dhul Qa'dah. According to some historical narrations, however, also Imam al-Rida salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi is born on the 11th of Dhul Qa'dah, according to some. And therefore, from the 1st to the 11th, usually many speakers and scholars talk about both of these personalities together. And so when we want to look at the life of Sayyida Masuma, we have to look at the life of her great brother, Salamullahi alayh. As we understand, many of our Imam were subjected to torture, were subject to, for example, negative propaganda. When the Quran mentions the example of the beautiful tree, the pure tree, it also mentions the example of the tree which is khabitha. It gives the example of that tree which is monstrous, which is vile, which is impure. According to the Mufassirin, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this monstrous tree, He is talking about Bani Umayyah, because Bani Umayyah, as we know, ruled for around 83 years within the Islamic era. However, after Bani Umayyah, there was also another accursed tree known as those of Banu Abbas. And it was Banu Abbas who were the main political group during the time of the Imam al-Rida and his sister. And as we understand, Banu Abbas take their name from their ancestor. So Bani Umayyah took their name from Umayyah, who some historians believe was part of Quraysh. In the same way, Banu Abbas take their name from Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, who was the uncle of the Prophet. And so they come from this line. And so when the Abbasids were first sparking up, they said, look, we are from the lineage of the Prophet, because the Prophet and our family share the ancestor Hashim, whereas Umayyah and Bani Umayyah do not share this ancestor. Therefore, we are closer to the Prophet than anyone else, because our ancestor was the uncle of the Prophet. Maybe they forgot that Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam are the children of the Prophet. This Abbasid movement in actual fact started in Khurasan, because within Khurasan there was an individual by the name of Abu Muslim. This individual, Abu Muslim, he wasn't originally a Muslim, he had converted, and he had a very strong holding within Khurasan. Abu Muslim deceived the people by starting large processions with many hundreds and thousands of people, and he would hold a banner. This banner would say, al-Rida min Ali Muhammad, that the pleasure of the people is with who? Alu Muhammad. Now when we think Alu Muhammad, we think who? Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. When he put this banner up saying, look, we want the governorship to go to Ali Muhammad, people thought it means the governorship will go to the Imams. However, in actual fact, when he said this term Alu Muhammad, he was talking about the Abbasids. People thought he's talking about Ahlul Bayt. However, he tricked people by saying, look, I believe, Abu Muslim, that in Khurasan we should protest and we should ensure that Alu Muhammad are given governorship. People said, yes, we agree, Ali Muhammad have the right. However, he said, no, according to me, Ali Muhammad are the Abbasids. And so the Abbasids came to power, and there was an individual in this early Abbasid period by the name of Abu Ja'far Mansur al-Dawaniqi. This Abu Ja'far al-Mansur was such a vile man that Abu Muslim, who was his strong friend and ally, who was his right-hand man, after a while, he gets Abu Muslim killed. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, in actual fact, had his base in Baghdad. And when we look at the lives of the A'immah, we find that, look, each and every single one of our Imams has had to face these type of individuals. But there is one thing, span through all of history, from Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi to Imam al-Asghari, you will find one thing in common. Every single tyrant ruler that they have had to deal with was completely opposite to the Ahlul Bayt in their character. Completely opposite. For example, you find these khulafa and these khalifs of the Abbasids, they were seen, for example, drinking alcohol. There was one khalif, I won't mention his name, otherwise many people will be exposed tonight, and I don't want that. But there was one khalif, as he passed away, it is said, nabidh, date, alcohol, was running down his lips as he passed away. Without saying La ilaha illallah, without saying Muhammadur Rasulullah, he died while nabidh, alcohol, was in his mouth. These were the khulafa that were so-called appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam were completely opposite to these individuals. These Abbasid rulers were alcoholics. Look at Amirul Mu'mineen. What does he say? He says, if there is a stream or an ocean or a river, if there is a river and one drop of alcohol is placed in that river then goes into various different streams. One drop of alcohol in the river. That river then goes into various different streams. One of those various different streams then hydrates a farm. From that farm grow certain crops. There is a camel which eats those crops. I, Ali ibn Abi Talib, will choose not even to sit on that camel, because of that one drop of alcohol at the beginning. This were the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wasalam. Whereas these rulers were completely drowned in this type of sin. When we look at Imam al-Rida salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, During the first part of his life, as we know, Harun al-Rashid was the ruler. When Imam al-Kadhim passes away, Imam al-Rida openly says, look, I, Abu al-Hasan al-Rida, I'm the next Imam. Without any doubt, people have seen it, people have the proof. I am the next Imam after my holy father. When he began announcing this, he went to different cities and towns to tell people, look, I am the next Imam. An individual comes to him. Look at the way in which the A'imma are completely linked to Rasulullah. They are part of one. Someone comes to him and says, Ya Abul Hasan, Ya Imam Rida, you should not openly say these things. You should not openly say that you are Imam, because Harun is Khalif. If you say you are Imam, this is going against his Khilafah. Imam al-Rida gave a reply which only an Imam could give. He said, O individual, have you not heard what Rasulullah said? Rasulullah said, Abu Jahl, if he is able to pluck even one hair from my head, I, Rasulullah, am not a prophet. O individual, I say the same thing. If Harun is able to even pluck one hair from my head, I, Rida, am not an Imam. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected me. And so Harun al-Rashid, as we know, passes away. Before Harun passes away, and he's buried in Tus, as we know, Khurasan, the reason behind that is something else. This Harun al-Rashid, before he passes away, he has two sons. The first, Ma'mun. The second, Amin. According to historical narrations, he appoints Amin as his successor. However, then there was a bit of confusion. The confusion came that people realized that yes, Amin is there and Ma'mun is the governor of Khurasan. However, reports started to become famous that before Harun passed away, he changed his mind. Reports started arising that before Harun passes away, he appoints who? Ma'mun. Ma'mun, of course, is hungry for the Khilafah. Ma'mun says, oh my brother Amin, what does the Khilafah have to do with you? Give it to me. And ensues between these two brothers, they are stepbrothers, ensues between these two brothers a battle. That Amin comes and tries to conquer Khurasan, where Ma'mun is present. He's unsuccessful. Ma'mun then comes into Baghdad, he kills his own brother Amin and he takes the Khilafah. Once Ma'mun takes the Khilafah, now we see the way in which he tries to involve Imam al-Rida in politics. Ma'mun understands that Imam al-Rida salamullahi alayhi is an Imam, he is part of Ahlul Bayt. He's not an ordinary individual. He has karamat, he has miracles, he is a perfect individual. He holds the reins of Isma in his hand. He wears the shirt of the Prophet of Islam. He's not a normal individual. Ma'mun realized that if I allow al-Rida who lives in Medina, if I allow al-Rida who lives in Medina to propagate freely, I will be completely ruined within 6 months. So what he does is that Imam al-Rida and his family, Sayyida Masuma as well, live in Medina. In fact, we are told, according to Shaykh Mufid and certain historians, that Imam al-Kadhim salamullahi alayhi that Imam al-Kadhim had between 37 children, some say around 63, 69 children. This is the number of children that Imam al-Kadhim had. The two that shine within history, of course, is Imam Rida and Sayyida Masuma. And they lived in Medina. Medina has always been a city of political inactivity, of political rest. Ma'mun, what he does, he says, oh Rida, I want you to come and be with me in Khurasan. He says, why should I come to Khurasan? Why should I come to Marv? He says, look, I want you to be the Khalif. Not the representative, not the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I want you to be on the post that I am sitting on currently. Imam al-Rida has the same mentality as his father Ali ibn Abi Talib. That Ali ibn Abi Talib says, what is the Khilafah in front of me? What is the Khilafah? What does that have to do with me? I don't want this. Imam al-Rida says, look, the Khilafah has nothing to do with me. When I am an Imam, what is Khilafah in front of me? Ma'mun says, no, I want you to come. And so we find that the Imam takes this journey. And this journey is very interesting for two reasons. The first reason why this journey is so interesting is that we are told that during the month of Muharram, according to one source that I have read, during the month of Muharram, the first 10 days, the Imam stays over in Qum. And he holds one of the first ever series of 10 lectures for Imam Hussein in Qum. One of the first ever kept was by Imam Rida in Qum. As he leaves Qom, he goes towards Khurasan. As we understand, he is in Naishapur. And as we know in Naishapur, what's in Naishapur? We have, for example, Qadamgah, where the Imam has kept his footsteps. We have the water which came out because of the Imam's command. We also have, for example, Shatita, the great lady. However, when you go to Naishapur, you'll find the hadith of Silsilatul Dhahab, the golden hadith of Imam Rida. And I think every single person, not just here, in the whole global world, who calls himself a Shia of Imam Rida, should have this hadith by heart in Arabic at least. Forget about understanding it. At least in Arabic they should memorize. This hadith is what? La ilaha illallah hisni. فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِصْنِي عَمِنَ مِنْ عَذَابِي. La ilaha illallah hasni faman dakhala hisni amina min adhabi. 20,000 people, 30,000 people were present when he said this, and there are different variations. Kalimatu la ilaha illallah hisni, or la ilaha illallah hisni. He says that I have heard from my father, who heard from his father, who heard from his father. The chain goes on to the Prophet heard from Jibreel heard from Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, La ilaha illallah, Tawheed is my fort, is my castle. Allah is saying this. Whoever enters into this fort of mine is protected from the adhab of mine. La ilaha illallah is my fort. Whoever enters into this fort is protected from the adhab. Then Imam al-Rida mentions an extra line from himself, which is probably the most important line that we have from his life. That he says, La ilaha illallah hisni. فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِسْنِي عَمِنَ مِنْ عَذَابِي وَلَكِنْ بِشَرْطِهَا وَشُرُوتِهَا وَأَنَا مِنْ شُرُوتِهَا. That yes, La ilaha illallah is the fort of Allah, but don't forget, I, Abul Hasan al-Rida, am a condition for Tawheed to be accepted. In order for Tawheed to be accepted, I, Rida, am a condition for this. However, there is also an interesting hadith. If you go to Qom and Mashhad and Najaf, wherever you go, the ulama and different organizations will have the second variation of this hadith in front of their rooms. In hotels, in the offices of the Maraji, that yes, La ilaha illallah hisni is the first version. The second version of this hadith of Silsilatul Dhahab is what? Wilayatu aliyin hisni. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib is my fort. Whoever enters into this fort of Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib is saved from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I asked the question, Imam al-Rida was in one place. Did he say one thing or two things? Did he say La ilaha illallah, or did he say Walayatu Ali? It doesn't matter, because in essence Tawheed hidden within it is Walayatu Ali, and hidden within Walayat of Ali is Tawheed and La ilaha illallah. Imam al-Rida then goes on. He goes forward. As he enters into Khurasan, the story is very long. We're trying to get to Sayyida Masuma in the end. The Imam goes forward and he meets Ma'mun. Ma'mun as an individual was one of the most cunning individuals in the whole of history. Why? Because till today, and this is very funny, till today, as we know, who killed Imam al-Rida? Who poisoned Imam al-Rida? Under whose command was Imam al-Rida killed? Ma'mun al-Rashid. Yet till today in the books you'll find that according to many Sunni scholars, Ma'mun was a Shia Muslim. You'll find in the books that Ma'mun, according to these books, he was a Shia Muslim. When the Imam comes to Ma'mun, Ma'mun says, look, I want you to be the Khalif. The Imam says, no. What do I have to do with the Khilafah? No, of course not. After a lot of repetition and continuously hammering this into the Imam that I want you to be the Khalif, the Imam says no. Then he says, fine, I want you to be Waliyul Ahad. I want you to be the second in charge, and I want you to be that individual who succeeds me after my death. In other words, if you don't want to take the post now while I am living, fine, take the post of second in charge. Imam al-Rida says no, of course not. Again and again and again, he pesters the Imam, I want you to be Waliyul Ahad, the second in charge and my successor. In the end, the Imam accepts. We ask the question, why is it, Ya Imam, that you accept? If Khilafah is such a dirty thing, why does the Imam accept? The Imam says, I accepted, and this is within the narrations, because Ma'mun said, Oh Rida, if you do not accept, I will cut your head off right now. If Ma'mun is a Shia, if Ma'mun loves Imam Rida, why would he then threaten him with the threat of death? If he loves him, why would he say this? Someone else asked, Ya Abul Hasan, Ya Rida, why did you go and accept this Khilafah, this Waliul Ahad? He says, the same reason why my father Ali ibn Abi Talib accepted the Shura. What's this? As we know, Abu Bakr, the first Khalif, Ibn Abi Quhafa. Abu Bakr, when he was on his deathbed, he fainted twice. Can you believe it? He fainted twice, yet still they allowed him to elect Umar al-Khattab as his successor. So when it comes to the Prophet of Islam, he's delirious, he's unwell. But when it comes to Abu Bakr, Ibn Abi Quhafa, who is fainting on his deathbed, you take his last will and testament? Does this make sense? He faints twice and he says, Umar al-Khattab. When Umar al-Khattab is injured, his stomach is pierced, he then calls the people together. He says, look, now have a Shura council. Have a council of 6 people and elect one of the 6 within this council. Who was within this? Talha and Zubayr and others and Imam Ali. Imam Ali realized the only option I have is to go into this council. But you know what? The funny thing is this. Omar says, Talha, you're not ready for it for this reason. Zubayr, you're not ready for it for this reason. Uthman, yes, he is ready and he is great. Ali, Umar says this, Al-Khattab, this is within the books. He says, Ali ibn Abi Talib, yes, he will be able to take the people to great heights and elevations. However, Ali ibn Abi Talib makes too many jokes. Sorry? He says, yes, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he's too funny. Ali ibn Abi Talib is funny for 20 years in his life. Does this make sense? Imam al-Rida says, in the same way that I was forced into going into this agreement with Ma'mun, is the same way that my father Ali ibn Abi Talib was forced to go into this Shura and was forced to accept the Khilafah after the death of Uthman Affan. Now that we understand this, we understand that the political situation is very tense and volatile because the Abbasids within themselves had issues. That Ma'mun has killed his brother Amin. And so many people in Baghdad were upset that this Ma'mun, he calls himself an Abbasid. How can he do this? When he realized, Ma'mun, that the situation is very volatile, he calls Imam al-Rida to show people, look, O Abbasids, if you don't close your mouth, I will give this Abbasid power to an Alawi, to an Imam, and all of us will be ruined. In other words, to try and settle them down, he said, look, if you talk too much, I'll give all of my power away to this man. And in this way, Imam al-Rida comes from Medina to where? To Khurasan. This was the political situation of the time. That politically we had these groups, but also we had smaller groups. These smaller groups were causing, for example, riots. And they were Shia individuals. They caused a riot against the Abbasids in, for example, Basra. They caused riots against the Abbasids, for example, in Yemen. And Ma'mun is very scared. So Ma'mun says, if I try to show people, in the zahir, in the apparent, if I try to show people that Rida and me have a good connection and a good relationship, maybe these Shia individuals will not harm me and my regime. And here we find today that each and every single one of the A'imma alayhim salam in their lives, as well as the Quran, is testament to the fact that a time will come where politicians will be like the politicians of Imam al-Rida and Imam Ali and all of the Imams. The Quran says it openly. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. This is exactly what we are seeing today. It's exactly what we saw during the time of Imam Rida with Ma'mun. When you say to them, why are you causing fasad? Why are you causing corruption? Why are you killing so many people? They say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. We are only peacemakers. When in actual fact, those people that say we are peacemakers, they are those that cause this destruction. And the Quran says, وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَىٰ شَيَاطِينِهِمْ. When they are with their devils, they say, we are with you. When they're in front of the people, they say, what? We are with you, Ya Rasulullah. In the same way, Ma'mun, in front of the people, he said, I love Rida. Behind the door, he tried to kill him again and again and again. Until today, we see this currently, 2013, globally, politically. People say, we are trying to bring peace into this world. They are, in actual fact, those individuals that are bringing corruption and violence. This is Found within history. History does what? History repeats itself. So politically, we found these situations within which these different individuals tried to take away all of the power of the Shia Muslims. Therefore, Imam al-Rida has moved from Medina to Khurasan. Before we go on to talk about the social aspect and the social environment, recite aloud salawat. Socially as well, you find different social groups, some which were created by the Abbasids. Till today you'll find that certain political groups will secretly create organizations. They will not affiliate themselves with those organizations, yet those organizations will be working for them. You'll find this. The Abbasids, for example, created a group by the name of the Murji'ah. Within Ilm al-Kalam, scholastic theology, we study and it is taught that there is a group called the Murji'ah. The Murji'ah were funded by the Abbasids because of their core belief. Their core belief was what? Their core belief was that if there is a ruler who is tyrant, if there is a ruler who is committing sin, if there is a ruler who is drinking before Fajr time, we should have nothing to do with whether this ruler is good or bad. We should have nothing to do whether we should punish this ruler or keep him safe. Because Murji'ah comes from Raja'a, all affairs go back to Allah. So whether Yazid is killing Imam Hussein, whether Ma'mun is poisoning Imam Rida, it doesn't matter, because all affairs go back to who? Allah, and in the end He will deal with it. Does that make sense? So someone is, for example, setting this mosque, astaghfirullah, on fire, and we say it will go back to Allah, let's leave him. These Murji'ah were a group that was supported by the Abbasids. They were funded by the Abbasids because the Abbasids knew that if we fund these individuals, then we, Ma'mun, and the others can do what we want. And we can say, look, the Aqidah is all affairs go back to Allah, therefore we can do whatever we want. This was the Murji'ah. The second group, the second social situation we see is the situation or the group of the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila also were funded and supported by the Abbasid regime. I do not want to go into right now Mu'tazili and Ash'ari and the different types, but the Mu'tazili also had their own beliefs. And the Abbasids for a certain time supported them. However, we also saw that there were certain other social characteristics during the time which were of importance. For example, number one, people during the time were completely engrossed in deceit and fraudery. Look at Ma'mun, for example. Ma'mun, this is within the books, Ma'mun would debate with scholars and he himself would prove wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yes, I said the exact same thing. He proved wilayah of Imam Ali, whereas wilayah is not in his heart. During this time within which Sayyida Masuma and Imam Rida lived, this was of course very popular, that individuals were frauds. They would show one thing, within this would be something else. They would trick individuals, they would steal, they would loot. In fact, within the life of Sayyida Masuma, her caravan was looted. Why? Because socially, the situation was very bad. And here, of course, a very interesting short story is found, which is often mentioned, that Nabi Isa salamullah alayhi sees 3 dead bodies. And someone says, Ya Isa, what's the deal with these 3 dead bodies? They have gold with them. What's going on? Isa salamullah alayhi says, look, these 3 individuals were thieves, they were robbers. So they had gone somewhere, they had thieved a large amount of gold. They'd thieved this large amount of gold, they had kept it somewhere. Now, of course, thieving, you get very tired. It's not like you're working 9 to 5. You get hungry after thieving, after stealing someone's money. So 3 of them were there with the gold. They said, look, all 3 of us are hungry. Let's get some food. So they said, look, how can we get some food? How can we go and buy the food when we have all of this gold with us? So 2 of them said, we will safeguard this gold. One individual, you go, you buy the food, you come back. So this one individual goes. In his heart is deceit. In his heart is fraudery. He says, why should I split my share of gold into 3 and have 1/3? I can have all of it. So he takes whatever food it is, he poisons it. As he comes back, the other 2 had also thought, why should we split the gold into 3? When he comes back, let's kill him so we can split the gold into 2 parts. So right enough, he comes back with the food, they cut his head off, they eat the food, they themselves die, no one gets the gold. Nabi Isa salamullah alayhi says this is what the result of fraudery and deceit actually is. One of the social conditions of the people was this fraudery, that they would loot, they would lie openly without thinking twice. The second very important social situation and characteristic of the people was that the people had lost the light of Wilayah of Ali from their hearts. Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib no longer illuminated their hearts were dark and dim. Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi's Wilayah did not bless them anymore, and there were many individuals. And this began to spread. Individuals who had no Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib in their hearts. During this Abbasid period, in actual fact, science was blooming. A lot of scientific work was done in optics and astronomy and mathematics. They built, for example, many masjids. They built, for example, many other areas of interesting architecture. However, we understand that if Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib is not in your heart, you can do whatever you want, it is of no use. Ma'mun can do whatever he wants. Ma'mun can say again from this tongue of his that I believe in Ali ibn Abi Talib as the successor. If it's not in your heart, it's of no use. In fact, there's an interesting story that I often narrate in relation to this. How Wilayah of Ali ibn Abi Talib is the markaz, is the center, is the pivotal point for all other actions. They say that in Kufa, as we know, Kufa was a metropolitan city. Kufa was a city of many individuals. You have, for example, on one side Qambar and Amir al-Mu'mineen and Kumayl ibn Ziyad al-Nakha'i. On the other side, you had individuals like Abu Musa Ash'ari. Abu Musa Ash'ari was the most thick man you have ever seen. If you look in the history, you'll see what Abu Musa Ash'ari actually did. And you had so many different groups of people in Kufa. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Was leading the prayers in Masjid al-Kufa. It was before Fajr time, so he had done his Salatul Layl at home and his Ibadah at home. He had left his house to go to Masjid al-Kufa to lead the prayers. As he is walking, behind him is his great companion Qambar. I've said this before, this is a line of poetry in a certain language. I won't quote the poetry, I'll just give you the mafhum. That you, O individuals, have not been able to understand the status of Qambar. How are you going to understand the status of Ali ibn Abi Talib? You haven't understood Qambar, how are you going to understand master of Qambar? Qambar was with Amir al-Mu'mineen. They were walking towards Masjid al-Kufa. As they walked towards Masjid al-Kufa, Qambar hears the beautiful sound of Quran coming from a house. And Qambar knew that this house had someone recently had moved into this house. And so it was someone new in the city of Kufa. He heard beautiful recitation of Quran. So Qambar stopped, because of course when you hear Quranic recitation which is beautiful, you should stop and listen to it. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. So he stopped, he was listening to this Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't stop. He kept on walking towards Masjid al-Kufa. He says, Qambar, what are you doing? He says, I'm listening to Quran. He says, Qambar, understand that Quranic recitation of that individual will give no use to him. Now Qambar is thinking, I don't even know his name, I don't even know what he looks like, he's new in the city of Kufa. How does my master Amir al-Mu'mineen know that this person's recitation of the Quran will give no benefit to him? So he keeps walking, he says, okay, he's my master. They go into Masjid al-Kufa, they pray Salatul Fajr. After Salatul Fajr, people begin shaking the hands of Imam salamullah alayhi and asking him questions. So Qambar sees that my Imam is busy. I will go now to that individual. I'll see what's up with him. Why did Imam say that his Quranic recitation will not be forgiven? So Qambar says, I went back to his house. I saw he was just entering his house. I said, Salamun alaykum. He said, Wa alaykum as-salam. Qambar says, can I ask you a few questions? Welcome into Kufa, whatever, formalities. He says, I want to ask you a few questions. He says, yes. Number one, what do you believe about God? He says, I believe in La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. So Qambar in his mind says, first thing, check. Number two, what do you think about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam? He says, I believe he is Khatamun Nabiyyin and he is the greatest of prophets. He says, number two, check. What do you believe about Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Abi Talib? He says, Ali, he's a normal man like me and you. So Qambar realized, okay, I've understood. The first two, yes, he passed. The last one, He's gone. But Qambar was still thinking, how does my Imam know this? How does Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu al-Hasan, know this? Qambar was entering into Masjid al-Kufa. From far away, Imam says, Qambar, did you get your answer? Qambar says, yes, my master, but still I can't understand. How did you know? Imam Ali says, Qambar, you misunderestimate me. You underestimate me. You misinterpret my fada'il. Qambar, when every single soul was in alamul arwah, the realm of the souls, and when before we were in this life, we were in the realm of the souls. I'm sure you met each other and spoke, etc., etc. He says, Qambar, when all of us were in alamul arwah, from Nabi Adam till Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, all of you souls, all of the arwah, which of you testify to La ilaha illallah? And Qambar, many people testified to one God. And Qambar, I can still hear their voices in my ear till today. Then he says, oh Qambar, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, who testifies to Muhammadun Rasulullah? And Qambar, many people replied, and Qambar, till today I can hear their voices in my ear. Then he says, Qambar, then Allah asked, and who testifies to Aliyun Waliyullah? Qambar, till today I can hear those people. When I heard his Quranic recitation, I realized it's from the first group and the second, but not the third. Now let me say one thing, and this is an indication to a certain historical event that took place, if you understand, that if recitation of the Quran is not accepted when wilayah of Ali is not in your heart, how can it be that compilation of the Quran is accepted when wilayah of Ali is not in your heart? Now look in the history, who said he compiled the Quran? Was he actually the compiler of the Quran? The second most interesting social quality during the time was many people had wilayah of Ali lost from their hearts. And now, after all of this 45-minute introduction that I have given you, we come to Sayyida Masuma. That Sayyida Masuma, salamullahi alayha, her fada'il can be seen in this. That the Imam is now in Khurasan. Qom as a city has always been a Shia city. We don't have time, otherwise I would mention, but for those of you who want to see, there's many books such as Majalis al-Mu'mineen of Qadi Nurullah Shustari. Now, it's not in English, but you can read it. And there, Qom and the whole story of Qom is mentioned. Qom has always been a Shia city, from 83 AH till today. Sayyida Masuma, her fada'il can be seen in the fact that when Imam Rida goes to Khurasan, we find only one letter where he mentions his family member. And the only family member he mentions in that letter is his beloved sister Fatima Masuma. And he says, Ya Fatima Masuma Qom, your love is in my heart, I want to see you. Oh Masuma, come to Khurasan to meet me. Her fada'il can be seen in this, that he did not mention any other of his siblings by name and say, I want to see you. History has only mentioned that he mentioned the name of Fatima Masuma. Ya Masuma, I want to see you, come. The second thing, the reason why she moved from Medina to Khurasan or to Iran was not just for the love of her brother, but also because ulama tell us, historians tell us, because the Imam wanted her to propagate Islam as a female. Now understand this, if the social situation is negative, if it is volatile, if there are riots taking place, only a brave lady like Masuma will say, I will come to the command of my Imam and go with a caravan no matter what happens to me. Within Sayyida Masuma is reflected the light of Zainab salamullahi alayha. Sayyida Zainab has a completely different status. We're not comparing. But some light from the personality of Sayyida Zainab is seen in Sayyida Masuma. That even though she understood that if I travel from Medina to Khurasan, I may be looted, I may be killed. God knows what could happen. I'm leaving my family behind, but I understand my brother, the Imam, has called me and I will accept. Which is why till today as she enters into Qom, as we know before that her caravan is attacked, and people are killed and looted. She's unwell. She's moved to Qom. 17 days she lives in Qom. And imagine what great status she has, that in 17 days of her presence, Qom is the city we see today. Qom is the city we see today. And a socio-political aspect is also found in Qom. Because they say, why is Qom called Qom? There are many different reasons. Qom means stand, get up. Fi'al amr. Qom fa'andir, for example, in the Quran. It says because when Imam Mahdi salamullahi alayhi when his dhuhur takes place, many individuals from Qum will rise up. Qum means stand, will rise up in support for him. Why? Because of the blessing of Sayyida Masuma's presence. Despite all of the political situation and the danger, she goes to spread Islam into an area which is unknown to her. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Sayyida Masuma in Qum, that those individuals, especially our women, Ya Allah, allow our women, many of them, to go and study and become scholars and spread the religion. Ya Allah, allow us to be those individuals who fight with Imam Mahdi salamullahi alayhi. Ya Allah, allow all of those individuals who are currently being affected by these political activities in Syria, in Pakistan, in Bahrain, in Afghanistan, in Myanmar, and all over the world, in Iraq. Ya Allah, please protect these individuals. And allow us to do our duty to those individuals, because our duty to those individuals is very important. Ya Allah, allow us to be those who help the Imam in his fight against oppression. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyik al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala abaihi في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينايا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع الله بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك رافع الدرجات إنك ولي الحسنات. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات.